It's a new Kirblog with a brand new attitude, and I hope that you'll watch them all and listen to what I will say. Do-do-do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do-do. I enjoy that song. Anyway, welcome back. We're continuing onward with Pokecember, my month-long of Pokemon-related Kirblogs for the month of December. Today is actually one that I've been sitting on. I know I say that a million goddamn times, but a question I've been sitting on from a user who submitted asking about the Pokemon anime series. So this question comes from Commander Awesome, saying, "Hey Chris, can I suggest you doing a Kirblog on the best seasons of the Pokemon anime?" And here I am finally. I think this might have actually been like the question that got me to do Pokecember in the first place, or at least like had the idea for. I've had a few other ones that I was thinking about, other Pokemon related topics, but I digress. So in the first one of these I did for the month, I talked about how I got into the franchise in the first place, and part of that was through the show, where I had an animanga of the second episode called Pokemon Emergency. That was in an issue of Nintendo Power, part of the Pokemon Power 6-month kind of special mini magazine thing they had. And one morning I saw, this was back when the show was actually being syndicated, and Kids WB, or rather WB in general, back when that was what it was, long before the age of the CW network, was airing the show in syndication. It was one of many channels at the time. I think they even had like listings for where the show was going to be airing in that Pokemon Power mini magazine thing. But either way, so I happened to see the same episode of the comic that I happened to have, and I was like, whoa, what is this? And I got deep into it, and I would wake up every morning on this was back when they would show 5 episodes every week, Monday through Friday, at 7 o'clock in the morning on Kids WB. Oh, it's turning commercial now. So this was actually before new episodes were airing on Saturday mornings, which is kind of really how it's been for the longest time now. And I followed the entire show. This was the first run of, well, no, it was like 50-something episodes or so. I can't remember how many exactly, but it was up until the March of the Executor Squad. Every time to do that. Where they were just showing those like first whatever number episodes all looped over and over until eventually Kids WB, Warner Brothers was like, okay, you know what, we want this. It was kind of like what Cartoon Network did with DBC after a while, where we were like, you know, we want this for us. We want this because we can tell that this is going to be huge. And so after that, Kids WB started airing new episodes, sometimes on weekdays as well, but most often on Saturday mornings every weekend. And from there on out, I followed the show for a very, very, very long time. I want to say it was right up until around just before the Battle Frontier arc, which I'll get to that. So this is going to be kind of a combination of my experiences with the show itself, as well as my thoughts on particular seasons. So I guess to start off with the beginning, the first season, of course, as most people that grew up with it, and otherwise, even people who've gone back and watched it, solid bunch of episodes. I actually own all of the first season of Pokemon on both VHS and DVD because I wanted a digital copy of it way later when they put out what I think they've repackaged them as the Indigo League episodes is what they kind of call Season 1 now. But yeah, lots and lots of fond memories of getting up every weekday morning and watching those. A lot of classic episodes. A lot of there are some also, I will admit, some antiquated things about kind of the way that the show was. The show was very, very different back then. And my kind of general opinion, I've stolen this from someone else, but I think that the show is just as good now. I think it's just very, very different. And people, as I've often found, don't often like things that are different. Especially when it's something different from what it is that they grew up with. I think that they're both good. Of course, I have different types of, childhood memories with the first season because that was what I watched as it started. And I consider myself very lucky that I, as with growing up with the franchise as it came to America in the first place, I feel very fortunate that I watched the show when it first started. And it was a very kind of magical time where just all of this stuff all at the same time had hit the U.S. and, everybody was all kind of on the same page and we were all excited about the same kind of things. I remember also finding out about those 5 particular episodes, 2 of which I think later aired, the 5 episodes that were banned. In fact, maybe 3 out of the 5 of them aired, but the ones that didn't, of course, were the ones with the Porygon, fiasco that caused the seizures in Japan at that time, as well as the actual episode where they go to the Safari Zone and there's the guy with the little 6-shooter waving in Ash's face. Those aside, some particular favorites of mine from back in the day. Right, I guess the kind of mini arc of episodes involving the Saint Anne or SSN, as well as the Island of the Giant Pokemon, and then going to I forget, the little beach town where they were stuck at for a while. One of the lost episodes or skipped over episodes at that time was in that part of the show as well. And of course, the leading up to the Pokemon League, a lot of those episodes when like Ash had gotten back from defeating Team Rocket and getting his 8th badge and training for the Pokemon League for a bunch of episodes. Those, I actually think I might even like some of those more than the actual Pokemon League episodes at that time. And then of course also the gym leader fights are always great. The Ash versus Blaine, i.e. Charizard versus Magmar, is definitely my favorite fight scene of the first season, hands down. Orange Islands, I remember, was a fun little tie-over. I think I gave a lot less shit to Tracy at the time because he had a Scyther, so therefore he was automatically cool to me. And also Meryl, because he was one of the few Gold and Silver era Generation 2 Pokemon that were still being teased, you know. So, of course, that I gave him a little bit of a break, but I was very happy when Brock came back. And kicking off the Johto season, the first of the 3 Johto seasons that they had, all kind of in tandem, was kind of a cool start because they actually had Ash and Gary having a fight with Pikachu and Eevee. That was a tense situation. That's one of Mike Hecht's favorite ones to say. Was fantastic. And of course having Brock come back as well after all that time of being calm, which seemed kind of weird in retrospect as to why that happened. I've heard different stories about that, but that aside. The 3 Johto seasons I actually like to give a lot of credit to. And even though there's a lot of them that I don't even have like distinct memories of like specific favorite episodes necessarily, which I know because it's like, oh, you just listed a bunch of season 1 ones that you all remembered. Yes, but the difference is I really, really enjoyed the writing of Johto was season 3, 4, and 5. That was Johto Journeys, Johto League Champions, and Master Quest, I believe. Those in particular, I remember distinctly having very, very, very funny dialogue. There's one particular scene. It was what the hell was it? It was the one where the Smeargles, they were owned by a painter, and they were literally painting a town that was made of marble houses with their little tails. And Jesse and all the guys at Team Rocket were trying to make copies of the artwork that they could sell and make lots of money off of. And she was looking at the copies and being like, oh, this is terrible. This is stupid. What are we doing? You can't sell and make a career out of art with a bunch of cheap copies. And then James pops in with, I don't know, Jesse, if Andy Warhol did it, I don't see why we can. And I'm like, that's too smart for Pokemon, and yet I love it. Like, and there was also some particularly funny moments between Misty and Brock in that era. With there was one episode where there's a girl who falls in love with Brock and has this whole thing where like she names people after like a portmanteau of 3 different Pokemon or whatever. Her name was like Tamaku, I think. And Misty was trying to like jump on, dude, you have a girl who's attracted to you. Like, get on that. Don't turn your face away from this. What is wrong with you? And then, what was the other? They go to Ecruteak City and they meet the Eevee sisters, which were actually some cool characters. I liked them. And Brock has like the same animation of him like going after them like over and over and like declaring like, oh, I'm in love with you and you're the only one for me. And then he does it 5 times. And then they come back and he's like, oh, Ash, I'm in love with all of them and they're all in love with me. And Ash is like, well, you're half right. Like, just shit like that was so funny to me, and it was so different than like the way that the first season was written. It was just kind of a different sensibility, I think, by the time that they got into like this place of comfortability with producing the show at that time. So the Johto seasons, those 3 in particular, are amongst my favorite. And of course, leading up into the finale, which was an awesome 6-on-6 battle between Ash and Gary, the one that we had always been wanting. And for those of you who haven't seen it, please go look up those episodes. You can probably find them, I think, on like the Pokemon app, and I think you can probably buy those episodes on like iTunes and stuff like that. But that I think it was 2 or 3 episodes that they split up the Ash versus Gary stuff in. The final battle being Ash's Charizard and finding out that Gary's starter that he took from the very first episode and the whole time was Squirtle, and it being Ash as red with Charizard and Gary as blue with Blastoise. That final fight is so goddamn amazing. It's really cool, and I recommend going back and watching really all of those seasons. They all incredibly hold up. I would say just as much, maybe if not more, than the first season even. The 3, I guess technically 4 seasons of Pokemon Advance like Ruby and Sapphire, like that Generation 3 as a whole, wasn't crazy about. I kind of stopped watching the show close to when the advanced season was kind of, I think, being over. I can't even remember, actually, if I saw No, you know what? I did. I do remember, because Masamune, or Morrison, Sean Schemmel's character, who is played by Goku's Japanese actress as well, was kind of funny. I did see those episodes, so I didn't make it to the end of the Hoenn League, as it were. I definitely stopped around Battle Frontier, and before everybody crucifies me, it wasn't just because of the cast change, because considering I know and have worked with almost all of them at some point in some capacity, so there's no negative bias then. But it was also like I wasn't really all that enthused about the Ruby and Sapphire video games, and I was kind of falling by the wayside, which I kind of regret, because, moving past that, there's not a whole lot to say about Generation 3's stuff, but I remember I wasn't crazy about May and Max, to be honest. I found Misty to be written a little bit funnier, not just because, oh man, Season 1, Gen 1 for life or whatever, because there are other characters we've had on the show that I'll get to later that I do really like a lot. May, I kind of got used to after a while, and Max, I think I grew a little bit more attached to after the Jirachi movie, which I'll talk about in another Kirblog. But yeah, they were fine. It was an interesting experiment. I think that Pokemon X and Y, which I'll also get to later, did a lot better of a job at the 4-person traveling party for the show, to be honest. But it was a cool experiment, and the show was definitely beginning to change. And I kind of regret missing out on a lot of Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, because I feel like that was really the beginning of the show starting to do more overarching plots, because I got back into the show when I booked my character, Corey, I want to say 2/3 into the Diamond and Pearl series. I think that was because Diamond and Pearl was, I think, 3 different seasons, if I'm remembering correctly. But either way, I came in, I think, during the second of those 3 seasons, and I started watching some more stuff from there, and caught up on a few older episodes and everything like that. That was when Tom Whalen had taken over on directing the show. They had moved into a different studio after the cast had changed and everything. But I was following it for a while, and I was seeing a lot of the stuff happening with Team Galactic and all that, and the rival character of that season was Paul, who, from what I've been told, actually had some of the biggest developmental arcs in the entire show, because he went from a complete douchebag to being a halfway decent human being and learning how to actually care about these creatures. Not to mention the Team Galactic plot of trying to get all these different legendary Pokemon and do all these things with time and space and whatnot. And plus the actual characters were kind of interesting, with Cyrus as the leader and all the little planetary young characters kind of working underneath him and everything. Were really cool, and I was kind of digging as I was watching the rest of it. With Detective Looker, who was hilarious. Following along with it for a while, I was like, this is kind of cool. I'm into this, and then kind of transitioning next into what might possibly be. I don't know if it's my favorite ever. I think because I like it for different reasons, but I watched almost all of Pokemon Black and White. I was following that show for a long time. I auditioned for it originally. I didn't book anything. I played a very minor character in one episode, way later during the episode N storyline. But I was following Black and White for a long time, and definitely catching all the major episodes and everything. The thing that I loved about that was not only did they continue on with having an overarching story that the characters could follow for a while, other than obviously the fact that we missed out on some stuff because of the 2 episodes that were cut because of the disaster that happened in Japan at the time, the earthquake and the tsunami and everything, which is completely understandable, obviously, wanting to be sensitive to the times, of course. But that aside, having that story, and not to mention more specifically and more importantly, having recurring characters. In Pokemon Season 1, there'd be an episode where Ash, Misty, and Brock would meet a person with a particular Pokemon, and we'd never see that person again except for very minor exceptions. And that was it. And there was no, payoff with any of that stuff at any point. We're oh, Ashley, I'll come back and I'll see you again, and we'll see each other at the Pokemon League or whatever. In Pokemon Black and White, the coolest thing was by the end of that series, of I think the 4 seasons that they did of it, went on a little bit longer than the other ones, there was an entire cast of recurring characters that the show had introduced and people had gotten attached to, and it was awesome, because the Unova League was all comprised of characters that you had met and gotten attached to over the course of the entire show for multiple years. So as I was watching the Black and White story unfold, I was realizing, wow, they're doing a lot of stuff in the show now all these 10, 15 years later that the original series never even touched before. And not to mention, the other thing that I really enjoyed was the traveling party of that series was really strong. Particularly, Iris, I felt, had a lot of the same kind of solid comedy behind her that Misty did. Where she treats Ash like a little kid, and has that kind of complex with him, but maybe still has a little bit of a thing for him, maybe, or at least implied or such or whatever. Although that's more about Serena, which we'll get to her. But Iris was really she made me laugh, and Eileen Stevens, who actually played opposite to me as the part of Lyra in my episodes, went on to book that character, and she was stupendous in that role. Jason Griffith, I felt kind of bad for with Silent, because Silent, I feel like, was a character that was really difficult to translate in terms of not the dialogue, but culturally, because he's a host club kind of guy, and he's a sommelier, and so he was kind of just I'm a guy in the show, and he didn't really, I feel like maybe he didn't get to live up to his full potential, because we have to keep him as understandable for little kids getting up on Saturday morning as possible. Not to insult the writing or anything, but it's just again, it's a cultural difference of that character just doesn't come across the same kind of way. So didn't love Silent, but I did like the dynamic overall of Ash, Iris, and Silent with Pikachu and Axio as the two, outside of the Pokeball characters. Going back a little bit, Dawn was all right. She was a little bit better than May, a little bit more interesting, but I still wasn't my favorite of the protagonist ladies that they have constantly been switching out. I will say it was nice to kind of change things up with having Brock out for a little while, and also kind of doing some new things with Team Rocket as well. But yeah, Black and White was fantastic, and then of course the episode end stuff where N joined in for a little while. Having other characters join with the crew for a while, I felt was really interesting, and it reminded me of back when they did that with Todd for a while, of when Pokemon Snap was coming out. Because that's kind of the purpose of my character, was to do that, more or less. But anyway, last but not least is the X and Y series. And I admit that I've not been following it as much as I probably should be. But I was definitely watching the first maybe 10 episodes or so as it was premiering on Cartoon Network at the time. People have been telling me that the overarching story and character development of that series, as I think it's on its second season by now, I believe, has been possibly even the best the show that has ever been since the beginning, which is incredible. But I was really enjoying what I was seeing, and the thing that I took away from it the most that made me really happy about it was the new traveling party. This was the case where they were going to have 4 characters on the crew, like with Pokemon Advance, but the dynamic between them this time is much more interesting. The fact that Serena, in her case, is actually the first of the traveling party characters who legitimately, canonly, that's a word, has feelings for Ash, and kind of seeing where that's going with the two of them is actually really intriguing, and I'm curious about where that might go in the future for sure. Clement, I think, is really interesting. He definitely translates a lot better, and he's a quirky, fun little guy. Mike Lucio does a really funny job on him. He beat me out for that part. I was really close to booking Clement when I auditioned for him, but Mike Lucio is awesome. Really, really nice guy, and he was a former fan of Pokemon as well, back in the day. And then last but certainly not least, Bonnie is the best thing to happen to that show in ages, because my God, she's so adorable and so fun. She is the funniest main character in all of Pokemon to me. And I love Team Rocket as well, don't get me wrong, I know that's blasphemous to say, but Bonnie is just so well-roundedly adorable and funny and likable and entertaining. I love her. She is definitely one of my new all-time favorite characters, and particularly the anime interpretation of her, because I know that in the video game she's just kind of around as Clement's little sister and all that. But either way, yeah, so that's kind of everything. I'll give one more little bit of credit too, to just Ash and Pikachu. Because I know that with a lot of other buy the toys kind of Saturday morning type of anime series like this, often when they go to a new generation, they get completely new characters, completely new protagonists. And I know a lot of people are, oh, he's still 10 years old and blah, 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 he still hasn't learned. You know what, I don't want to spend a whole thing on that, but my whole interpretation of the deal about Ash and Pikachu is that they're blank slate enough to be interpretationable and for a kid to relate to, but they still are really fun and entertaining and just as iconic as any other iconic American cartoon character, I would say, in terms of our culture specifically. And I think I once heard the description of changing Ash and Pikachu for Pokemon is taking the golden arches from McDonald's and flipping them sideways and doing that or something and just changing that out. It just seems weird, and I don't know. I still like them for what they are. And, I think that there's still always a new generation of kids that are going to be introduced to whatever the newest season is, and experience the show that way and love it for what it is, you know? And if anything, maybe they technically have it better than us than how we had it when we were kids. Who knows? But it doesn't also take away from those classic episodes. They're still always there for people to enjoy for what they are. And I love it all. I love the Pokemon anime series. I think it's completely deserving of being the #1 anime property in the world still, as far as I'm concerned. And that's my answer, ! To your question, Commander Awesome. So that's it. In the comments below, please let me know of your thoughts about the Pokemon anime series, your favorite episodes, your favorite seasons, your favorite main characters or recurring characters, anything at all. Let me know. If you have suggestions for future Pokemon Kirblog related topics to do in the month of December, leave a comment about that too, or hit me up on Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook, whatever you feel like. That's it for me. I will catch you all later in an Ultra Ball. Or a Master Ball, but I've only got one of those, and I'm saving it for Articuno and not Mewtwo. Don't judge me. Bye.